I kind of make the joke, I learned a lot about feeding cattle by screwing up all of our customer cattle when I was there, because they thrust me pretty much into a manager's position I was in over my head. Human beings overcomplicate everything. So I made it real simple. She's like, turnover, turnover, turnover. So what I heard was run, Forrest, run. Translation, trade, cowboy, trade. So that's what I did. I just, these are overvalued to these other animals, so I'll sell these and buy these, and just started doing the trades. The cash flow was absolutely amazing. Your job, play by play by play. Don't worry about what's on the scoreboard. Don't worry about what's on the clock. We execute. That play's over. Forget it. Move on to the next one.
Welcome back to the Wealthy Cowboy Show. I'm real excited about today. I'm going to get to learn something, and I hope y'all do too. Got Doug Ferguson on, Mr. Cattlemaster. He puts on buy-sell marketing classes, and we're just talking about that kind of around the country a little bit, but based out of Nebraska. And we're going to get into all that. But first, I kind of want to, we talked about it a little bit before, but get into your background, where you came from, and how you got here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Thanks for having me on, Crockett. I've listened to some of your past episodes. You've had some high-quality guests on, so I'm flattered to be here. So, yeah, very quickly, my background grew up in southeast Nebraska, which is kind of the western edge of the Corn Belt. So, I grew up in farmer country. It's a dry land row crop operation, raising milo, beans, wheat. So if I were to be a part of the family operation today, I'd be the fifth generation. My family also had commercial cow-calf, and that's kind of where my love affair with cattle began.
Was it running it on like grazing those crops
Yeah,
out?
so there's, you run cattle on pasture, and then you bring them off, run them on corn stalks in the winter. So when you're in farmer country like that, cattle are kind of something to do in the wintertime when you're not farming. So cattle go to pasture when you have a planting delay. They come home after harvest or during a breakdown, something like that. And, of course, then we love to run machinery. So I grew up chopping a lot of silage, pulling, so I learned how to drive, was pulling a disc, pulling silage wagons, those kinds of things. So then in high school, I was only presented with two options: go to college or military. And so I chose the college route and dropped out of college to focus on riding bulls. So I had some full-time jobs working on a ranch in the Sandhills, left that to go to a feed yard job. Then I got a job working in a feed mill. And I refer to the feed mill job as the best, worst job I ever had. It made me absolutely miserable. You got your time card with your name on it. You punch into that clock, it scratches across that card. A piece of my soul dies every day I clock in there. So I eventually quit.
What were you doing? Kind of describe like what you did at those jobs. Were you cowboying at the ranch in the feed yard, or were you doing other responsibilities?
Sure. So the cow-calf job was small. I was in a small town south of Valentine called Thedford. And, this is one of those where you turn off the highway and you drive for miles before you get to the place. It was extremely remote. And, yeah, I did a lot of work on horseback, calving cows. He had some yearling heifers he was running out on meadows that I had to take care of every day. And I loved it. The reason that I left that job was, I'm 18 at the time. And there were no girls around.
Yeah, you weren't going to stay anywhere very long.
And he
especially if you wanted to rodeo.
And that's why. And that was the big kicker. He's like, I want you to stay here and make alfalfa hay all summer. I'm like, man, if I wanted to farm, I could have stayed in southeast Nebraska. The point of coming to the Sandhills was to get somewhere where corn doesn't grow, and I don't have to drive a tractor all day. And so he's like, yeah, I don't want you riding bulls so much. And I'm like, that's kind of my social life. So as a kid, I should back this up even further. As a kid, I only had three things I want to do in life: ride bulls, have a family, and raise cattle. That is the childhood dream for me. And I've been fortunate enough, I've got to do all three. And so I loved that job. Man, I loved it. And it was kind of heartbreaking to leave. So then I left there. Okay, now I'm unemployed. I don't have enough confidence in myself to just rely on riding bulls. This feed yard position opened up.
Were you, sorry to keep interrupting, but just curiosity, were you kind of staying local right there in Nebraska going to rodeos?
Yeah.
Or
Yep. Oh, so rodeos, I would have went anywhere from probably North Dakota, Wyoming. I think
you were traveling a little
I think
bit.
I got as far east as Wisconsin once. And, I'd kind of get down to southern Oklahoma, never really ventured into Texas. To put it into context for people that maybe weren't alive in the 90s, that was about the time the bull riders only deal went broke. And so you had all these little pop-up organizations, PTBRA, Pro Tour Bull Riding Association. And so a lot of them were right there in Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, a little bit into the southern edge of South Dakota. So we could go to these local bull ridings and make some good money. So when I say I went pro, I never joined the PRCA. I could just hit these bull riding deals that called themselves pro. And, they had good sponsorship, good added money. And, you could make a few $1,000s on a weekend, if you rode well in it.
Right.
The thing about, and I'm kind of comparing this to amateur rodeo, but the thing about it back then, the movie 8 Seconds came out, so everybody was a bull rider. So those rodeos had rough stock slack. And so you could hit a perf, go a couple hours, different association, hit a slack, drive all night, hit a slack at 8 in the morning, hit a perf again that evening. So you could get on 7 bulls in, 3-4 days. So there was a lot of driving, a lot of oil changes, things like that.
Yeah.
But oh man, be 19 forever. It was a great time. And man, I look at these rodeos today, they're begging for rough stock riders. And you go to a local amateur rodeo and
we just had our amateur.
How many bull riders did you have?
I don't think they filled up the perf every night. I think Saturday night had 8.
Yeah.
I think Thursday and Friday didn't even have 8.
That to me is tragic. Bias and all that. Bull riding's the best sport. Bull riding taught me so much. You don't realize this when you're in your teens, but then, you get my age, you got a 40-year-old brain. I look back and I'm like, oh man, I learned so much from rodeo, and it transfers right over into entrepreneurship. Like dropping out of college was the best decision I could have made. So, after I left the ranch in the Sandhills, the feed yard job was local. It was, close to home. And I've told some people about that job before, and they think it was an abusive situation. The owner wasn't a real good manager. He had a high-dollar registered shorthorn herd. That's where his focus was. So the feed yard, we were custom feeding cattle. And so I kind of make the joke, I learned a lot about feeding cattle by screwing up all of our customer cattle when I was there, because they thrust me pretty much into a manager's position I was in over my head. But, I caught on after a few weeks. So anything from shipping, receiving, feeding, if anything broke down, I had to fix it. I'm not a mechanic. So I learned a lot of my mechanical skills right there on the job. I was told I was supposed to have every other weekend off, and I worked 17 weeks straight, all 7 days, minimum of 10 hours a day. But I loved it. I mean, just like that Sandhills job, I loved that feed yard job. But I remember I explained this old cowboy one day, and he's like, if you can work in those kind of conditions and still love it, you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing. And the reason I ended up at the feed mill was in that feed yard changed hands. There's change ownership, and I get the axe. And so that feed mill job come up, and I took that. And yeah, that's what I say was the best, worst job I ever had, because that lit the fire in the pit of my stomach that I'm never doing this again. And eventually it got so bad, I just had to quit. And that's what I started day helping. And there was a big paradigm shift there, because I go from this $8 an hour job that's paying me 15, 20 grand a year, and you make more money in the last 4 months of the year than you did in the first part of the year at a steady job. And so I'm like, man, if I really hustle, I could make 100, which to go from 20 to 100 was, a lot of people would tell you you're crazy. But I was day helping, work 7 days a week. 18-hour days just hustling. And it took a couple years, but I finally did gross $100,000, and I've never made less since. You know, it's like you break that glass ceiling. Oh, now I know how to do this. And then what was hard now is just like, oh, that's easy. Mm-hmm. So
what do you think, changed? Like, what pushed you? Like, you think it was relationships, or like you learned something, or you just worked harder, hustled different avenues? Like,
you know, I guess I never thought of that. You know, when I was a kid in school, everybody's like, you know, and I'm high school, you got to go to college to get a degree. Cattle be something you do on the evenings and weekends. You can't make a living doing this. This is where you probably will insert that I'm a teenager with a bad attitude. If you tell me it can't be done, we got this $80-some billion a year industry. Again, you know, context of time, it's more than that now. But if you're telling me that in this $80 billion a year industry, we're all just doing it for giggles, you know, BS, I'm just not going to listen to you. So then, oh, you're a teenager, oh, you got it all figured out already. I didn't have the answers. I knew there had to be something out there, and I'm kind of a big believer in the law of attraction. So when I was in college, I met this kid. His dad owned a feed yard in northwest Iowa. When I quit that feed mill job, he calls me one day, and he says, you know, I think we can buy cattle out of southeast Nebraska cheaper than we can buy them in northwest Iowa. Would you go to the sale barn and buy cattle for us? I'm like, hell yeah, I'll go to the sale barn, spend your money, drink coffee, and tell lies. That's how my sister described me becoming an order buyer. He had a partner with him in that feed yard, and one of their stipulations was, if you're going to buy cattle for us, you got to read this market blog. All right, yeah, whatever. I didn't read it. I delivered a load of cattle up there one night, and they're like, are you reading that blog? And I said, no. And they're like, well, come in the office. You know, back the old days again, get on the dial-up internet. They pull this blog up, start reading it to me. It's after midnight, and I'm hearing stuff about market commentary I've never heard before. At the time, Ann Barnhart was teaching the sell-by marketing schools, and she had this market blog. I mean, similar thing to what I do with my Intel blog that's on the Farm Progress websites on Fridays. And so she was teaching the sell-by marketing school. She had one in Kansas City, 3 hours from home for me, man. You don't get any closer to home than that. So I enrolled in that school, and I had to make a choice, kind of put this in context. Tuition for the marketing schools then was $500. That was a choice between, do I fill the propane tank for the winter, or do I go to the marketing school? Well, I went to the marketing school, and I sat there for 2 days, and I'm like, this is it. This is the answer. This is how you make money raising cattle. And so I left her school and had this idea in my head, I'm just going to become the best in the world at sell-by. Not because I ever wanted to teach marketing schools. That was never on my radar. I got pushed into that. My thought was, if I get really good at this, I have an advantage over everybody else. That's going to be the key to scaling the business and getting to live that childhood dream of owning a lot of cattle. So I feel like, yeah, law of attraction and all that, I had to go to college to meet that kid. And then it just set this complete different trajectory for my life. So to kind of try to answer your question, where did that drive come from? I don't know. I just wanted to own cattle. Mm-hmm. And so everything that I did when I was younger was just a means to an end. But I had also been told so many times over and over, you can't make a living doing this. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just be a broke cowboy like everybody else, but I'll be doing what I want to do. And that was really kind of, I don't know, Crockett, I never thought about it. It's just, I wanted to do it.
Dax Trailer Sales is based out of Lubbock, Texas, and it's definitely not just a trailer dealership. If you are involved in the Western way of life, and if you're listening to this show, you probably are, they have something you need. From trailers for a day working cowboy to a full-time cattle hauler to hay trailers for a farmer or rancher to arena drags, rope and chutes, and feeders for the rodeo cowboy or cowgirl. They also deal in every kind of hay any of your animals could ever need. Literally anything you need for farming, ranching, or rodeoing, they have something for you. And it's gonna be at a super affordable price. Besides all that, everyone you deal with there is super friendly and helpful. We just got new custom flatbeds built for our pickups, and I also got probably the coolest trailer you've ever seen built. And you can stay tuned for a video we're gonna do, and it's gonna show all of that and some more of their products also. So check out Dax Trailer Sales on Facebook or daxtrailers.com. I was just talking about that the other day. It's I was the same way, it's all I ever wanted to do is be a ranch owner, cattle owner, and same way I come about it from cowboying, and I was like, I was getting to do what I wanted every day, but I wasn't an owner in much. And something in me wanted to be the owner, for some reason. I think you could go work on a ranch and not make any money, but be just as happy, because you're getting to do the same stuff with less responsibility, actually, and less stress, and do all the same things. But some people are driven to be owners, and some just want to be a part of it. And then I coming about it in a roundabout way. I was like, I'll go figure out how to make money to then become an owner and then get to do that. So kind of a roundabout way, but there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I mean, everybody's got a different story on here, how they get to it. But generally, most people, that's what they want to run cows or livestock or own a piece of land or something, something is their goal. And everybody gets to it in a different way. But it's cool to hear. And especially like you, I haven't talked to anybody like you that has learned that. It's real foreign to me, so I was glad you got to come on.
That's the neat thing. We just finished a marketing school in Tennessee last week, and we're pushing close to getting 1,300 people have been through our school. So I can't remember names, but I remember stories. And one cool thing, when I stand in front of the classroom instead of sitting in the other side of the table taking notes, I get to hear a lot of amazing stories. So I can't remember names, but man, I remember stories.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to your story. You went to that school and you're buying cattle and stuff, and then how did it progress from there? So
the neat thing about sell by marketing, it's what the old timers you'll hear say in sale barns, you make your money on the buy. Mm-hmm. And there's this algebraic equation that we use, I think Ann nicknamed it the cattle square, and that's what I call it. But so like on stockers, you make your profit on the buy. So you do this algebraic equation. So when you sell cattle, you take that sell price and their cost, and you put it into this algebraic equation, and you can do it by different weights. And so it'll give you a stop sign. So what I call it, this is the maximum bid that I can spend on a steer that weighs 500 pounds and hit my profit target. Because see, we're putting the profit in there as part of that expense cost. It gives you all the control. Because the harsh reality is when we market cattle, when we sell, we're price takers. We don't have a whole lot of control there. And that's okay, because we control the buy. If that auctioneer's price starts getting too high, you just quit bidding. Mm-hmm. And you wait for another draft, or maybe you got to look at a different weight. And so you have to be disciplined. That's a big key. You have to be disciplined. And so when I first saw it for the first time, I'm like, that's so easy. I struggled in classes like chemistry and geometry in high school, but I got A's in math. Math is fundamental. It doesn't change, at least until Common Core, but that's a different podcast. Mm-hmm. But, I could do math, and it's like, well, if all I got to do is this math, build a barn cart, I could go to the sale barn and do really well. Of course, there's a lot of other real world things that, have to factor in, and I try to pass as much of what I've learned as I can on in the schools, to try to give people an idea of what to look at. I've started nicknaming some different trades, forced equity trade and upgrade trade, steady trades, leapfrogs, things of that nature, just to try to help them. Like, there are so many opportunities. When you go to an auction, it is the closest thing we have to free market, laissez-faire capitalism left in this country. So that means you can lose a ton of money. Also means you can make some good money, but you have to know what you're doing.
And so, like, after that class, how did you go implement it? Or did you?
That's That's a good question, and it's something I get from a lot of people that have been through the marketing school. So when Ann taught that class, she really pushed turnover on the stocker side, and I had cows and calves, and at the time I was buying lightweight calves, owning them for a year, selling them as fats, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do, finish cattle. The idea of turning around and selling a 6-weight never occurred to me, to be honest with you. So she preached that turnover. So I explain it, because I make everything very simple. Human beings overcomplicate everything. So I made it real simple. She's like, turnover, turnover, turnover. So what I heard was run, Forrest, run. Translation, trade, cowboy, trade. So that's what I did. These are overvalued to these other animals, so I'll sell these and buy these, and just started doing the trades. The cash flow was absolutely amazing. And so, there's other people that talk about you got to have this or this to have a good business. But whenever you listen to any of these podcasts with these $1 billion type investors, the people on Shark Tanks, the Grant Cardones, any of those, they always talk about cash flowing assets. Well, that's what these cattle were. They're cash flowing assets. So with that turnover and that cash flow, if I sold 40 head, buy back 45. Sell the 45, as long as one doesn't die, then you could buy 52. And this thing starts scaling, that snowball effect. And, eventually you get there, where then, you can quit the day help jobs and just focus on raising cattle and the cash flow.
So did you sell your cows and just go to running stockers?
I eventually did sell the cows. So I feel like I should, full disclosure here. So some of the cows were given to me as sweat equity from my dad. Some of them I bought in. And one of the ways we decided to kind of set up the transition was when we sold a coal cow, that was Dad's. And then when we kept heifers, those were mine. So it wasn't like I was getting feeder cattle checks from selling calves every year. What I was earning was inventory, owning breeding stock. Eventually, we got to the point that I owned probably 85 or 90% of the cows, and that stocker deal was treating me so well. And I might be a little twisted and demented when I say this, but I love those problems. Buying that group of high-risk cattle, straighten them out. There's a sense of pride in there. When you resell them is a really good set of straightened out cattle. And, I talked to the family. I was like, hey, Dad, you don't own very many of these cows. I think I'm just going to sell them all, go 100% stalkers. And so I did. There would be certain times of the year, sometimes, holidays, the family was a little cold to me. And it took a couple years before I figured out that, I sold grandpas and great-grandpas, cow herd.
They'd been raising the herd for a while.
It'd been in the family for generations. And then I'm the jerk that sold it. I have gotten back into cows, but not in the sense of like running them as a closed herd. I'll buy bred cows, calve them, resell them as pairs. Some of them I do keep around a little longer term, get a calf, run a bull, calve her again. There's just no set recipe.
Well, it's kind of like you talked about cash flow, which I think cash flow is super important. But like a cow, that's what we're doing on here, is just learning everybody's operations and takes. And mainly the guys that sit over there are stalker guys, feed cattle, something to do with yearlings. And the cow guys I have had on have like traded cattle, same deal, like cash flow, turnover. Because I've been involved in some aspect in a lot of different areas, but it seems like the whole turn a cow out, calve her, and you don't do anything. You just haul the calves to the sale barn. You just don't. It doesn't seem like it cash flows enough to sustain, what I want to make, as my income, or what a lot of people want to make as their income. You got to be doing something with it, and especially with land cost.
If if you're going to sell one calf crop a year, you absolutely have to hit the lottery when you sell those calves. But if we can change that paradigm from that closed herd concept, selling that one calf crop, maybe we market some of these overvalued cows and, keep some heifers, or maybe you buy in some bred cows or something. Now we're starting to increase that cash flow. You're increasing that turnover. Right now, this cow deal's, there's two words that I hear describing the market. It's crazy and wild. And, man, there was a guy.
The cow-calf guy's really loving it right now.
There was a guy from Texas in that Tennessee school, and, and he was showing me market report. He goes, we just sold $5,100 bred heifers in Texas last week. And Crockett, you can't help but laugh. I mean, it's like, holy smokes, I never thought we'd see these prices. But one of the best ways to make money in the cows is taking advantage of that gestation period. You got this long 9-month gestation period, so you could sell one that's in the third trimester and buy one in the first trimester. Huge value capture there. You could sell pairs and buy back a bred. Another huge value capture. And when I say value capture, I'm talking like 4 figures a unit. If you could sell this bred one for $4,200 that's in the third trimester and buy one that's in the first trimester for $26,000, man, that's monster cash.
Yeah, we were just talking about that at our rodeo. We had a double mugging and wild cow milking, and we used my Coriani cows with their Charolais cross calves. We'd mug those and milk the cows, and we were just talking about those calves weigh, they're like 4 weights, the ones we used, and they're worth $1,500 or whatever now. And I'm like, they sure do good on those $500 cows, because I bought in 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm like, dang, now that looks smart. Which is, timing was a good thing. I said, timing is what saved me, because my management, I'm still trying to learn everything and figure it all out. And plus we had drought, and now timing worked out really good for me.
And people at home are going to listen to this, so I have to say this, Crockett. We have the best cow-calf producers in the entire country in the state of Nebraska. They'll make sure you know that. And so, we've got these really good black and black baldy type cattle, raise them good, heavy bone, soggy made type calves. But you just mentioned Coriani Charolais cross, and the people in Nebraska heard that, and they're like, WTF, man. I've bought a lot of different types of cattle, and you cannot turn your nose up at that Charolais Coriani cross. That Charolais, nothing against the Corianis, they're good cows, but that Charolais works some magic on them Coriani calves. Those Coriani cows. Them calves are awesome.
Yeah, I've had good luck out of them, and really, I mean, that's not like my preferred breed. It was just the place that I leased where those cows went to was just rough and brushy, and
it works.
Yeah,
it's working. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, you said you kind of got back in. You're talking about trading cows and stuff, and then you're in the yearling stocker deal. Do you? I had a guy on a few weeks ago, and he talked about in the cattle business, you need to be a moving target. Do you kind of just look at opportunities across the whole industry like that?
Yeah.
Or I mean, a lot of people just get zoned in on their niche, and then like sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
So one of the big reasons I got into cows as heavily as I am now is the stocker deal. It's a little bit more labor intense. You got to deal with some health issues, get them calves straightened out. And after you've done thousands and thousands of those, you look at a cow and go, man, you're easy. Cows don't get sick. They don't die as easy. You just go off over there in the corner, have calf, and she licks it off and raises it. Like, I don't have to do much. And so it helps kind of take some burden off, my time. But in my marketing schools, I show a slide, and it's a picture of an acorn. I'll ask the group, how many people think there's an oak tree in the acorn? And, I get a few of them. I'm like, no, guys, come on, catch on. Oak tree's big, acorn small. There cannot possibly be an oak tree in the acorn. But what that acorn has is a pattern plan. It can't be a walnut. It can't grow corn. It can only be an oak tree. With sell-by marketing, and just kind of like you described, I'm looking at different relationships. I'll swap classes. It's not buy 5-weight steer, sell an 8-weight steer, buy back a 5-weight steer. I might buy a heifer 3-weight heifer, take her at 800 pounds. I might buy a 4-weight feeder bull and castrate him, might sell him as a 6-weight steer, might buy another lighter weight steer bull, grow that one, might switch back to heifers. I might sell that steer and buy a bred cow. There is no pattern plan. And years ago, I asked for a second line of credit at the bank. And when you break your normal character, your bankers freak out. So I broke character asking for a second line of credit. My loan officer's like, I don't know how I'm going to sell this to committee. And I said, check your email before you have the committee meeting. I'm going to email you every trade I've done in the last year, because I write them down in a spiral notebook. And any trade, what I sold, what I bought, any footnotes that are pertinent to that trade. And I emailed it to him. He took it to the committee. One of the other loan officers looked at it and goes, well, man, Doug ain't looking at the market telling him what to sell. He's looking at the market telling him what to buy. I'm like, yes, that loan officer gets it. I want to work with him. I still don't know who that was to this day, but, on the banker side, I have had good bankers, throughout the years. And, having a good banker helps. It really does. And so, yeah, it's.
How do you identify, how are you looking at holes in the market? Like what's the next opportunity going to be?
Right now, man, the value of gain is so good on these stocker cattle. It's paying us very well to put weight on these cattle. And really, that's about all you have to do is buy one, put some weight on it. As long as your cost of gain's cheap enough, which it should be against these value gains. I mean, every day it eats puts on a pound. Mm-hmm. It's helping. There have been years where the value of gain was squished so thin, it was not paying us to put weight on cattle. So I would buy balling calves, wean them 45 days, double vaccinate, and they were gone. So really all the market did that year was pay me to wean and, resort, repackage. So I'm buying these smaller groups, but I'm sorting them into load lots. And, they're all, started 45-day wean. They're getting a little grain. They've had 2 full rounds of shots. Heifers guaranteed open, guarantee all the males to be steered, that kind of deal. Things like that.
Just somewhere
that
where
you
can
could
add
value to. Yeah.
And it's, like you said, I mean, I guess right now in your eyes, basically you could go buy anything as high as they are.
It almost feels that forgiving. And, about a month or so ago, I heard some sale barn owners in Nebraska, make comment, oh, we can run with knives and scissors and not have to worry about it. When I start hearing comments like that, I'm like, oh man, that's when we should start, like, you better be frosty.
Yeah.
Because you are getting way too complacent.
Yeah. I want to go back to like when you started, how are you running your stockers? Were you running those on grass or some of those crops or in a yard?
So when I started, all the pasture I was renting was covered up with cows. I had I had a registered Angus herd, small herd, it's only like maybe 20 head. And this guy makes a smart ass comment to me one day and he says, well, I could probably buy Angus cows and raise my own bulls cheaper than I could buy them from you. And I'm like, yeah, why do you think we raise bulls? And so I shot him a stupid number for my Angus cows, and he agreed to buy them. And I'm like, crap, now I don't have anything put on that pasture. But I was able to take the money from those registered Angus cows, bought some stockers, kicked them out on grass. That was the first time I'd ever done that. So before, everything was in a backgrounding pen and, fed a TMR and that kind of deal. And those stockers come off grass, and I was like, that was the cheapest cost of gain I've ever had. And it got me a lot more interested in running the stockers on grass. So since then, I run stockers on grass in the summer. Most of the ground I run on's lease. So, I can turn them out on this date, but they got to be off by this date, and that's fine because that hits right with fall run. So I can sell them yearlings coming off grass, buy back balling calves in the fall, and then we'll all be backgrounded through the winter. And then next spring, you buy grass calves, turn them out. I like it. I feel like it keeps me fresh. About the time I get really sick and tired of feeding cattle in the pens every day, it's time to go to grass. by the end of the summer, I'm really tired of moving pigtails and polywires, and I'm ready to have chores again. And so I'm not stuck in that routine like I was at that feed mill job. It changes throughout the year, and every year has a different challenge. The last couple of years, my part of Nebraska, it's been real dry. This year we've been extremely blessed with rain. And man, this year's a lot different than the last 2 years.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that, but is it a lot of down here, like you get in farming country, it's a lot of hot wire and stuff? Is that how it is around you? Or
so where I live, the mindset is you don't have a fence unless you got five strands of barbed wire. And when I started doing the pigtail and polywire, I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. My neighbors still today think it's the dumbest thing ever, but you go through some of them drought years. So I started rotating the cattle, I think in 2012, which, was a bad drought for us. You guys had it, I think, the year before in 11.
Mm-hmm.
And, we went through these terrible droughts, like 23 got really dry for us. And even in 24, I had grass when my neighbors didn't, just because of that rest recovery period. And even just that little ticky-tack amount of rain that you do get goes so much further. I mean, I don't have to sit on this podcast. You've had other guests that have talked about it before, but, when it comes to that rainfall, it's not always how much you get, it's how much you keep. And I feel like the rotation helps with that. And I was on another podcast, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, and I'm like, I got grass in this drought, and my neighbors don't, but I will guarantee you will not see a spool hanging on a fence anywhere. And my neighbors did not make a liar out of me. Nobody else has copied the pigtail polywire.
Even though they see it working?
They will approach my landlords later. Oh, look at all that grass Doug left behind. Let me rent that for a month or something. And
graze it off.
And so it is written in some of the leases that I have all the rights to that grass. And if they do decide to rent it to somebody else, I get the check.
Mm-hmm.
It was my program grew that grass.
How where did you get into all of that, the rotational grazing and stewardship that?
So that was I bought the Island Nation books and read them. I was interested in it because I was attracted to it. The way it's presented, you can grow twice as much grass, right? So it's like, well, then I could run twice as many cattle on the same number of acres, and who doesn't want to own more cattle?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had quite those results, but to back it up for somebody that might just be beginning, I read those books, and I'm like, man, this guy doesn't know anything more about rotational grazing than I do, which is nothing. And so when I first tried it, I was really... I wanted to experiment more with my stockmanship. And the year that I decided to do it, so this wasn't when I went all in 2011. It was like a year or two before. It was a really wet year. And so I was just doing this with a small group, maybe 20 head. But I noticed when I pulled them off of that patch and moved them to a different one, it's like with that rain, it's holy cow. There's a lot of grass growing behind these cattle. Okay, now I have questions. I go back, I reread those Island Nation books. All of a sudden, Island Nation got a lot smarter. It's that whole deal. You see something in yourself the second time you read the book that wasn't there the first time. So I felt like... You
just have context about it.
I feel like, I had questions. I had better questions. And the answers were in the book. I just didn't get it the first time through. So I'm kind of a big believer. If you have a good book, sometimes you got to go back, read it a second, third time.
Yeah. Let's be honest. Ordering custom merch is way harder than it should be. You get some random sales rep who thinks ag is short for aggressive. They slap your logo on a boxy tee no one wants or the same cap that your competitor has, and then hit you with surprise charges for artwork, setup, and who knows what else. That's why I've been working with Brand Cowboy. They actually live in the ag, western, and outdoor world. No artwork fees, no setup fees, and they know what looks good because they're part of the culture. They're not faking it from an embroidery shop in the big city or screen printing shirts in their brother-in-law's garage. We're even building Wealthy Cowboy Show merch with them right now, and it's been awesome. They made it easy, fast, and actually fun. And if you want more than logos on blanks, they've got full cut and sew capabilities built from scratch, custom fabrics just for your brand. private labeling inside and out, head to brandcowboy.com and book a call. Mention Crockett and get a free 30-minute consultation on how you can build merchandise that your customers will actually want to wear, and at such a high quality you could offer it for sale no matter what industry you're in. Brand Cowboy, made for you, made for your brand. That's it, just in all aspects in business. I read a lot of business books and learn about social media and all this different stuff and sales and marketing, and it's like exactly that. You're reading it, it's just completely foreign. And then if you do retain any of it, probably at some point in your journey outside, in life, you're going to be like, oh, I'm pretty sure that was in that book.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then you go back and you're like, that's exactly it. But it seems like the hard way is probably the one that sticks to you the most, the hard lessons.
And my daughter, she's 14. She hears me say this all the time. I'm like, what is it with people that have to learn stuff firsthand? Like, there's people that have already done this. We don't have to relearn the lessons, but sometimes I've had to go back and relearn the lessons firsthand myself. And I think that's where having a 40-year-old brain starts to kick in. I'll take a little more time and think about something now. And, it's like I always tell her, pay attention to what it is you're looking at, because we've got our paradigms, we've got tunnel vision, and we see what we see based off the paradigm. And sometimes maybe you just got to take a minute and just really examine, study what it is. And then all of a sudden that light bulb comes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even get like a few people around, like everybody's got different perspectives. Even like you talk to somebody that's completely outside the industry or whatever it is that you're looking at, and they come at it through a whole new perspective, and you're like, dang, that makes sense. You didn't even know what you're talking about.
Real estate guys understand, they've come to my sell-by class, and it's like for them, it's like a duck to water. Mm-hmm. Like, they understand it. But sometimes trying to teach a traditional cow-calf guy a different form of marketing, man, they're looking at me like I grew 3 heads sometimes. And so, yeah.
How did that evolve through the years? You're running you kind of shifting away from the cow-calf and running the stockers there and learning about rotational grazing and all that. How is that? You said that was like 2012 or somewhere?
So, yeah, I got into the rotate. So I started doing the sell-by like hot and heavy. That's all I did in 2005, and fell into the rotation grazing about 2011, 12. Yeah, I think it was 12 when I jumped in both feet and whatnot. So when I sold the cows, that's all I did, because the cows, I think, left, and I'm talking about the family-owned cows, I think they left in 12 or 13, and then I was all stockers. And I never thought I'd ever go back to cows. I loved the stockers. It did that for a lot of years. The main reason I got back into cows again was I could buy an open wet bag cow for the same dollars per head as a 4-weight heifer. And 4-weight heifer was really undervalued at that point in history. And I'm like, okay, I could buy this 4-weight or I could buy this cow. But I could do a lot more with this cow than I could the heifer. So I bought the cows, bought some bulls, rebred them, and then I resold them that fall and went right back to stockers. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably still be 100% stockers right now, just other than the cows take some demand off my time. But, I'm not really a cattle snob in any way of like, oh, stockers are better or cows are better. I'm not going to say, oh, they got to be all fancy and black. I buy a lot of weird stuff. I take a lot of pride sometimes in my yard looking like a zoo. What I will say, and this may offend some of your listeners, I am a cattle snob in the sense of they are better than sheep and goats. But, even still, sheep and goats, I mean, if you're turning them and making money, that's even better. I mean, yeah, good on you for that.
That's how I was. I mean, we have sheep and goats right now. Not as many as I'd had at one time, but that was my deal. It was like, I've got this piece of land, I needed to make money. And at that point in time, they do really good in a drought. So it was a drought, and you could buy everything cheap, but you could run more sheep and goats. And then the same deal, kind of the value to gain there was worth more in that niche. So, but then we then at one point we sold them out, and they made money. We cash flowed them, plus they went up in value. And so I'm kind of like you're talking about. I'm looking for opportunity, except now I look multi-species. I haven't dealt with pigs or anything, but
pigs are a different. That's I raised some. I'm going to call them dirt raised pigs, just because I thought my daughter, when she was young, needed to be around it. And it's like them pigs. They're yeah.
There's so I've learned a lot about sheep and goats, and just coming at it from the perspective of when I was just a day working cowboy, I was looked down on that, and then it was like, now I want a place and I want it to pay for itself. We need to get creative, sometimes, and so that's how I got into that. And then same deal. I mean, the ones that are there now, we just kind of they clean up the weeds and the brush that are on some of the place. So,
and just, I mean, this personal observation, just a little bit that we drove across Texas here today, I see a lot of woven wire fences. Mm-hmm. So you have some places that to me look like they already have infrastructure in place for goats. I'm not going to see that at home.
Yeah.
It's going to be barbed wire, and I mean, them goats will be gone. And they're going to be gone into somebody else's cornfield, and you ain't going to find them.
What does it look like up there as far as when you're buying cattle? Are you going to the sale barn a lot? You putting out orders to order buyers, or are you buying sets of cattle? Or
so when I started, I didn't have very many head, so it was always local sale barns. So for context, my closest sale barn to home is 15 miles. There's another one that's 24 miles, then 31. There's probably, if I'm willing to drive an hour and a half from home, there's probably close to 24 sale barns. I haven't even been to all of them, because with that many, they're going to sell on the same day. But I started there, and I did start to venture out a little bit more. There was a guy, he had cattle in a custom feed yard. He passed. And I had a friend of mine that was feeding cattle in that feed yard. He's like, would you be interested in buying cattle for us? And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. And he said, well, we've been buying a lot of cattle out of Joplin. Well, I've never ventured probably more than 100 miles from home to buy cattle. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I went to Joplin first time, and it became very clear to me that was not a place for a rookie, which I had a lot to learn at that point, but I fell in love with it. I mean, it's just that market down there is, to me, so amazing. So I started buying a lot of cattle out of Joplin. Of course, then that led to other Missouri sale barns. Over time, I developed a network of people across the country, and my daughter was getting a little older, and so then it's like, I cannot drive to Joplin, Missouri. So I would leave home at like midnight and have somebody feed cattle for me Monday morning. So I'd leave home at midnight, drive to Joplin. They start selling at 6 a.m. So I could get there right when the sale starts, buy cattle all day, drive home, and I'd get at home ahead of my trucks, usually by a couple hours. So I might get a short nap. With trying to be a good dad and go to your kids' activities, I can't do that anymore. So now I have been relying more on order buyers, and so it's not uncommon for me to get cattle I bought a lot of them out of Tennessee. That's one of the reasons I wanted to go to Tennessee and do a school there. Kentucky, I've got them out of the Carolinas. I've even had cattle out of Louisiana and West Florida in the past. So having that, to me, that's the big thing for people that do choose to go to college, is you build a network while you're there. I had to build my network in the sale barn, and when you try to build your network in the sale barn, you have to show them guys that you ain't just some kid that's got a line of credit that's here today and gone tomorrow. Like, you got to prove you know what you're doing and you're going to be around, and it takes a little longer, I think. But, once you prove that you ain't going anywhere, that you kind of know what you're doing, they take you serious, and then it's just like other opportunities start to open up.
Yeah.
But it takes a while.
Yeah, it's definitely political in there with those buyers. Like I told you before, I worked sale barns a lot, and those guys jack with each other and get mad at each other when you're trying to buy the same cattle and stuff like that, and which it turns into it's mainly order buyers, and they have their clicks and stuff. Pretty much probably just like being in high school or junior high or something.
I do talk a little bit about that in the marketing schools. For somebody that's just starting out, if you stick with the math and you stick with that barn card you built, you will not get in trouble. But yeah, there's going to be some gotcha games and stuff with cattle buyers. And I tell every class this, cattle buyers got more drama than middle school girls. And I'm sitting here across the table from you as a cattle buyer, and I am guilty of throwing some of those fits.
Yeah, and it's always, you talk about being disciplined and just staying with the math and stuff, but it seems like at any of those auctions, whether it's equipment or cattle or horses or whatever, there's some emotion. Like you said, you don't want that guy to have them, so you'll pay a little bit more, and you're like, well, I'll just cheapen them up later or whatever, and then maybe those never cheapen up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you got to stay out of that. And so, with both you and I having a rodeo background, if you're going to be good at it, you're going to be a competitive son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. You cannot take that personality into the auction with you because, I tell every class this, you might go to that sale to buy cattle, but the best thing you could probably do is go home with an empty trailer.
Yeah.
And then you're mad. You wasted several hours and, oh, man, the whole day's corkscrewed, but you didn't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
You didn't blow your money and buy something that you shouldn't have bought. You stayed disciplined, and that's kind of tough, but that's how you survive.
Yeah. Talk about your class. I mean, that's how how I got to find you was that you teach a class and stuff on all this. When did that come about?
So there was this old boy. He was teaching classes, and he approached me about doing a class together. He was kind of struggling to get people to come to his, and at the time, my market commentary blog was starting to take off, so he thought that would help draw some people in. I put it off for well over a year. I wouldn't even entertain the thought. I am not teaching a class. And after maybe about a year or so, he's like, well, let's do a stalker special. See, now he stepped right into my wheelhouse, like, oh, I love stalkers. Like, yeah. So I built the curriculum for the stalker specials that are out there, even though I don't teach the stalker specials. And so we had a deal. We were supposed to co-teach several more schools, but him being the way that he is, he backed out of the deal. I didn't know he was that kind of guy at the time, but he backed out of the deal. I'm pissed. But my wife, she's like, you need to keep doing this. And so all I did then was I had the stalker curriculum all built, so all I'd do is add the breeding stock portion to it. And, man, if you told me I'd be teaching as many schools as I taught and 40 people or more at every school several years ago, I'd have laughed at you like, oh, there ain't. But they sell out. There's pretty good draw. We're not advertising. We haven't done really much advertising yet. And my wife is a mental health therapist. And when you start, so we started, our first school on our own was in 2021, and we've got well over 100 testimonials from people. Oh, you changed my life. You changing the family tree. Oh, gosh, I couldn't believe cattle business could be this good. But then when the first guy contacted us and he said, the only reason I'm still alive is because of that class. Now, that hits my wife as a mental health therapist, and she's like, oh, man, you're never getting out of this. You're teaching schools. And so now there's 3 people that have credited me for being the reason they didn't commit suicide. And there are things to teach in the schools like that I never would have thought would ever happen. And it is kind of a motivator to keep doing them. The prep work is a bitch. I try to build the curriculum specific for each school based off what's going on in the market right now. And so the examples in each curriculum will probably be a couple weeks old because I got to give the printer time to make the books. But it's been rewarding in a way that I didn't really see coming. Mm-hmm. And again, getting to meet people from all over the country. We've had people from 2 continents and 4 different countries been through the school. So my daughter gets to meet those people. She's learning about the culture. being in Tennessee, took a vacation down to Alabama. Now we're here in Texas. There's been some big culture differences just in those travels, which, you know, I probably wouldn't be able to provide my daughter with that kind of experience if it wasn't for the schools. But it kind of took you the long way around the barn on that answer. But I apologize for that.
Yeah, I think it's some same way with me. Like starting this deal, I get messages from people, and it's rewarding to hear. You know, you don't even know the lives you're touching or whatever, and it's cool. It's cool to hear people's stories, and I'm sure in business, like you need to collect the testimonies to put on the website to get more people to sign up and stuff. But it's cool to read them back and just for yourself.
So I started a couple years ago. You know, I started to do this, like I call it my Tuesday testimonial that I put on Facebook every Tuesday, and there haven't been any lately. The hopper's empty right now. But I started sharing the testimonials on social media and on the website because I'm like, oh, that's great to get people to come to the school and pay me tuition money, right?
Yeah.
And what started happening is somebody would reach out and they'd be like, hey, I read that testimonial, and, you know, this person was going through a funk at the moment. And they're like, that one hit me. And so then it's not so much a matter of putting them on social media to draw people to the school, but to put them out there for other people to read, you know, to give them hope. There's a big difference between being hopeless and helpless. You know, when you're helpless, like there's just nothing you can do, you know, or you can do something, but I'm sorry, I said that wrong. When you're helpless, you feel like there's just not much I can do right now. And it's more of a mental thing. When you lose hope, now you're screwed. And so if those testimonials can give somebody else just a little bit of hope, like, oh man, I just got to grind this out. I got to get through this season that I'm in or something, and it'll turn around and be better. It's become a different culture all of its own.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to watch how that's evolved over the years. And, you know, Crockett, it's like when I sit there and you see things like this happen, I'm like, there are so many days I don't recognize my life. Like, this is not how I planned anything turning out. It's not what I envisioned for myself. And I feel like I can't just sit here and use the word I. You know, I'm a believer, and there's a higher power at work here. And the Holy Spirit gave me a gift, and I just, you know, it's kind of like bull riding, man. It's like wherever my dance partner takes me is where we go tonight. To me, it's kind of the same thing.
Did you kind of have like when you said you put the school and all that off for a little while? Like, did you think you had a limiting belief, like you weren't worthy of being a teacher?
There was. First, I had a very poor outlook on teachers because I hated them all when I was in high school. And, you know, I got a different perspective of them now. But it wasn't until, you know, he said, we'll do a stalker special. Let's do stalkers. And I'm like, man, I love stalkers. But then he's like, we'll do it right there in Beatrice, Nebraska. And I was like, no, you can't do a marketing school in Beatrice, because when Ann tried teaching the schools years ago, she tried having a couple, you know, right there close to Beatrice and didn't get very many people enroll. I'm like, see, nobody going to come to Beatrice. We got to go to Cheyenne, Wyoming. We got to go to Oklahoma City or, you know, Denver or something like that. People will come there. And part of the reason was, you know, Ann had some YouTube videos that she made that were probably a little too far out there for a lot of people. And that, I think, deterred a lot of folks from coming to her schools there kind of towards the end of her teaching time period. But we ended up with 20 of them in that school that we co-taught. And 20 was a good crowd because that's right when they were lifting the COVID restrictions. And there were some people that wouldn't come to the school because we weren't going to make somebody wear a mask. And, you know, there was weird stuff we had to deal with on that one. But it worked. And, man, after that, it just caught fire. It's really strange to me how it all evolved.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. What is the curriculum now that it's evolved in?
So, you know, I've upgraded, I've changed the curriculum a little bit. I never had to go through this, but I knew other people would. You know, just since I've been buying cattle since I was a kid, for me, buying cattle is not a problem. but I knew it would be for other people. So I started with what some people call the psychology lesson or mindset. And I talk about paradigms. I had a really great mentor that taught me a lot about that stuff. So I took the material he taught me, put it in there. That's maybe about an hour and a half-ish long, go through the mindset stuff. Then I go into resource management, which is people. I call it the inventory pyramid. People's the base because everything above it exists for people. So we have feed, money, and cattle. And then if you imagine that pyramid, I draw a red line around the outside of it, and that represents time. And everything in that pyramid's tangible. We can touch it. Time you cannot. And of course, everything changes with time. So I spend the rest of the first day talking about that resource management. And then the second day, we get hot and heavy into trading. That's all we do. So I start with stockers because it's easier to understand the stockers. I also don't feel like I can start with cows. Because if I tell that traditional cow-calf operation, okay, sell this cow, they're just going to freak out. They're going to quit listening. But if I start by showing the relationships with the stockers, I can ease into the cow deal. And then I kind of wrap up day 2 with just kind of some, closing thoughts, rules of thumb type deal, those kinds of things. But
are you tired of paying record high bull prices only to watch your new purchases damage themselves or your things? Or even worse, stand in the shade and melt? 100th Meridian Ranching's bull leasing program offers a cost-efficient way to get your cows bred and creates more flexibility for you 9 months out of the year. With over 400 Black Angus, Red Angus, and Charolais bulls in inventory that are in range-ready, working condition, this could be the solution for you. Check out 100th Meridian Ranching on Facebook or Instagram, 100thmeridianranching.com, or give Lane a call to discuss more. 325-226-5240. How did you get into the start? I think about every course I've done is always starts with, no matter the topic, it always starts with mindset, because that seems to be people's biggest obstacle, I guess, is just believing that you can and understanding that. Did you learn that the hard way? Like you got into it and then people were like, oh, that won't ever work? Or
you may have heard of this guy named Gary LeFew.
Mm-hmm.
And he's real big on that book, Psycho-Cybernetics.
I've tried to get him on here.
And
we will one day.
I met Gary briefly. He was generous, give me a little bit of his time. He taught me some drills, talked to me about bull riding. Never went to one of his bull riding schools, but I probably should have. And I was like, man, I thought the whole point of getting out of school is to never read a book again. But if World Champ tells me to read a book, I read a book. And I read that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and I did the things in there it talked about. And all of a sudden, start winning some checks. And so I kind of became a big believer in the mindset way back then. But it wasn't until I met this other guy, the mindset deal goes so deep. And I could probably spend days talking about mindset and probably not even repeat myself on any of the material, but I have to condense that down very short. So yeah, every school starts with a mindset deal, but learning it in as much depth as I have from that other guy, and I don't mean to sound condescending when I say this, that was what he did, was what do you want to call it? Like, people probably would put the label life coach attached to him. But so many people's mindset material is so weak. And I hope the material in my class isn't weak, but it's a marketing school. I have to condense it down, and I got to give you a little taste of what's about to happen in your mind in the next 2 days and how to push through that and change a paradigm. And I don't feel like I can effectively teach somebody how to change a paradigm in an hour and a half. It boggles my mind that some people will say, oh, yeah, I sat in that hour and a half of that school, and I came to your school broken, and I started healing right there. And I'm like, really, in an hour and a half? Like, if you say it happened, then it probably happened, but I'm kind of questioning that sometimes.
Yeah, I always hear of like the education guys talk about that. Like, people want to come learn the tactical stuff, but if you don't do the mindset first, then you'll never implement. Because I tell people on here, like, any anything you want to do, you could go learn enough about it on YouTube and through books for free out there.
Absolutely.
Books you got to pay for, but a little bit, but not much. Through those two things, to do whatever you want, to make $1 million, to be successful wherever you want to be, to become shredded and muscular, or lose weight, whatever you want to do, it's all out there for free. And why aren't you doing it already? You gotta so you gotta like shift the mind.
You said a lot right there when you mentioned buying the books. Get on Amazon. We've had 40 some hours of windshield time in the last week. We've listened to a couple of your episodes, and you asked a guy, what was the best investment you made in yourself? And I think you even did a solo podcast. The best investment is investing in yourself. And I was sitting there, okay, what if he asked me that? Making the canned answer. But I'm like, yeah, invest in yourself, number one. Cattle's been a great investment, but my gosh, you can buy these books on Amazon, the used ones, for $3 and pay, $7-8 in shipping, and read those books and get so much out of them. Yes, we don't want to read books. That was the whole point of getting out of school. But here's the difference. When you're buying books today, it's a subject you're interested in, not that boring brain dead crap they made you do in school.
Yeah, I say that all the time. I've learned more since I've been out of school, grade school, and then I went to college for 4.5 years, and I've learned more, in these past 10 years, I guess, since I've been out than I did that whole time, or really the past 5 years when I started wanting to and craving knowledge. And
that's what life is about, growth, right? And I get asked to speak at career days, at different schools there at home. And I tell every group that, I don't care if you go to college, but you're going to have to learn skills. And, they gave you a free education. And I don't think these kids value it because they're forced to go to school. But I'm like, they taught you how to do math. They taught you how to read. You can walk out of here and teach yourself because you have that skill.
Yeah.
And then just pick a subject you're interested in. It's a lot easier to read a book when you're interested in the subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that too, like you could go, we've seen people be super, especially now with social media, you can be super successful financially in whatever you want to be if you learn how to market it, put it on social media, get people watching it. Because it's like no matter what, there's so many people in the world, no matter what you're really interested in, there's probably a million other people that would love to watch, or interested in the same thing. You could make a show about it or a page about it or a course about it or something.
Yeah. And, social media and YouTube, so I'm anti-technology. I still write everything down in a notebook I carry on my shirt pocket. And I hate to throw this name out there, but you look at somebody like Jake Paul, an obnoxious kid, starts making YouTube videos, makes millions of dollars having patty cake with Mike Tyson. I mean, life is so wild if you learn how to do something and do it very well.
Yeah. Just become a master in whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or not even a master, just pretty good,
And, that's the thing, going back to the competitive deal, and one of your past guests said something, same lines I'm about saying, I forget which one it was, but, he doesn't want to compete with the average producer, So many people are content being average. Oh, I just got to do this and I can make the house payment and pay it off in 30 years and make this car payment. And, I've got on these bracelets, one says fuck excuses and the other one says fuck average. Like what? Everybody wants to be average. So to be above average, it's just so razor thin. Mm-hmm. It is so razor thin. Just takes that little extra effort, that little extra bit of dedication, big payoff.
Yeah. We've mentioned that a bunch. Like it doesn't take much nowadays. Like these are really good times to live in because like if you listen to an educational podcast or read part of an educational book or just try to learn something every day, you're in a small percentage of people. If you work on yourself, whether same deal. If you work on your body, you go to the gym or something, you eat right. I mean, just any little thing to improve yourself, then like you're in a very small percentage. Yeah. And everybody's so tied up in just the day-to-day hustle and bustle. Nobody wants to do those small things, take the time to do it.
when I mentioned to you earlier, I was driving truck when I was younger. Man, you pull into some of them factories and you just see that zoned out zombie look on their faces. Oh man, learn a skill, learn a skill that's something that's marketable. Get out of there. But so many times those people look like they gave up on life, and this is what it is. I come to work here, I clock in, I get paid, and then I get to go to an archery tournament or something on the weekends. I mean, that for them, that's life.
Yeah, and kind of why I brought it up earlier when I asked you if you had a limiting belief on starting a class and becoming a teacher, mentor type person. Like, I think a lot of people out there have the skills and the knowledge to achieve success. You know, if they go, like I said, in whatever it is, they can achieve success doing that thing that they love to do and create a community around it, create a course, create whatever it is, create content about it. And we've seen a lot of people on here have changed their life doing that thing, just filming what you do and filming ranching or whatever. But just like you said, kind of learning something marketable. And that's a loose term. I mean, you have a skill to make money that you're able to teach people to make money, but it doesn't even have to be something that teaches people how to make money. It can be just teaching people on mindset or teaching people how to shoot a bow and arrow or, whatever. It's crazy what it is now. So the class you go through, it's mindset, and then you kind of go into the stocker deal, and then the cows, and then you wrap up. Is there anything ongoing after that to kind of help?
We've had a lot of requests on that, and this is where I'm starting to challenge some of my other paradigms. We've got a guy, and I've kind of put him on hold, but he's supposed to be updating our website, and I've had a lot of requests, to maybe set up kind of like a subscription website for people who've been through the class. That way I could put up some short videos, refreshers on something like that. So, I mean, we're not working on that yet, but, for people listening to this, I've heard you, we're thinking about it. Just, if you've met me being anti-technology, it's probably going to move a little slower than everybody'd like. But we'd like to kind of move in that direction, and I think there's a need for it. But I'm never any further than a phone call away. I answer the phone.
And we kind of talked about this before, are you going to expand on the schools, or do you only have a certain amount? Because you don't want to take your freedom away, but like, do you only have a certain amount a year you want to do, or you kind of
so
open?
We've been doing roughly 5 to 7 a year. And with my daughter's basketball schedule and, me still trying, control freak, I want to do everything I can on the ranch myself. 5 to 7's about all I feel like I'm comfortable with at this point. I think one of the things that draws people to my school is I'm actually doing it every day. I mean, I'm living. I'm not going to tell you to do something that I either haven't done or am not currently doing. Mm-hmm. And so there's some credibility, I feel like. And I'm like, man, if I step away and if I would do more writing, more speaking, more schools, I'm not there doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I lose that credibility. And number two, I just don't feel like I'd be happy. I think I'd be miserable. I got this one neighbor at home, awesome dude, but he's that guy that hasn't learned how to manage. He's always putting out fires, and he goes, oh man, I haven't taken a vacation in 7 years. And I'm sitting there going, man, I'd trade spots with you. I'd love to have more time on the ranch, because that's why I got into it. I love it. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy to me how people get into the cattle business now for the soil health aspect. That's so weird to me, because I'm like, I thought we'd get into the cattle business because we like cattle.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. And there's always a few of them that got into the cattle business for soil health that come to my class. They're like, oh, we got the soil health down. Now we need to learn how to start making money with these rascals that are eating my grass.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody has wants something different out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
What advice would you have to somebody that wants to get started in ranching and livestock in some form or fashion?
Starting from scratch?
So let's say like a first generation, you know, and I mean, it's so broad. I mean, there's young people listening that are getting out of school or whatever. And then there's, if a middle-aged person wants to get started.
So starting from scratch, first off, we got to get rid of this idea that the only way into production agriculture is through the tomb womb or the altar. You know, we hear that all the time. I mentioned earlier, I'm not really a part of the family operation at home. If you think starting from scratch is hard, try ranching with family, and then you'll find out what hard really is. So I'd say get rid of that belief. But if you're starting as a stone cold rookie, like, you know, grew up in downtown Fort Worth and now I want to go play cowboy, there's nothing that says you can't, because there's people that are doing it, but there's so much you have to learn. Get around successful people that are doing it. I would even say, you know, I mentioned that feedlot job that some people thought was abusive. You know, if you can work in that kind of environment and go back to what that rancher told me and enjoy it, then you're probably doing the right thing. If you're going to get into ranching because you watch this show called Yellowstone and think, oh, that's what I want to do, this probably ain't for you. So be realistic in some of those expectations. But yeah, then you got to start learning skills. You know, you're going to have to learn stockmanship skills and grazing skills and bookkeeping skills and, you know, what is it, the 7-8 different hats that we all wear. There's a lot. And you don't have to learn it all at once. That would be overwhelming. When I was learning different things, you know, I would go learn stockmanship, focus on that. I would learn like the business side, you know, how to enterprise the operation out, keep my books better. You know, I just tackled them, just small tasks at a time, get good at it, move on to the next one. That's what I did when I started. But man, that's a good question. There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. And it's interesting, maybe a little bit off topic, but since my daughter plays basketball in, you know, some of the bigger towns like Lincoln and stuff like that, that's where the clubs that she plays with are out of. You know, I meet all these other parents that have no idea, no clue about production agriculture. And they're like, what is it that you do? And if they want to know more detail, I give them more detail than just the 30-second little elevator speech. And they're like, oh, my God, I didn't realize you guys did all that. And I said, aren't you glad we don't come after your job? And then they kind of get that, oh, shit, look on their face. And it's like, yeah, we do a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what Dad used to say, too. Kind of like you said, you're working like 18-hour days, hustling, trying to make a living of it. And it's like if you just put half that effort into something that pays better, you're going to be very successful financially anyway. May not make you happy, but yeah, we could go. And you see that a lot. People that come from the country have that work ethic, and you can go to town and be super successful in a job or career or whatever it is.
That's a sad thing about production agriculture. Our greatest export is our kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't make a living ranching and go to town and get a job, you know.
And you wonder why there aren't any kids in it.
Yeah, but not only that, there's a reason they can go to town and get that job so easy. You know, they've got the work ethic, and they do come with skills. I mean, we all say this, you know, hard to find good help, so I raise my own, you know, and then you export your good help.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sit here, roll my eyes at
that. What's some good financial advice you'd give somebody?
Ooh. You know, I'm a money guy. Always kind of been a money guy, and for me, it's that reinvest in that dollar back into good cash flowing assets. And I don't care what it is, cattle, you know, real estate, something like that. And my wife and I, you know, we've got a good income. We still live like two broke college kids, you know, because I'm just like, you know, my job as an entrepreneur is to deploy capital and be very intentional with it. So I'm not going to remodel your kitchen for you, sweetheart. We're going to go buy 20 more cows or, you know, something like that. And that's what I've done. And then, you know, you make more money on it and you just put the house remodel off again.
Yeah.
And,
Get addicted to it.
Like Dave Ramsey talks about the debt snowball. Well, we can do it the same way with income through these assets. And this is what always kills me about people in the education space when it comes to agriculture. It's always cut costs, increase your gross margin, things like that. Nobody talks about raising the income. If you listen to those billionaire investors, they'll talk about raising your income, but we don't talk about that in agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Find things that you can do to raise your income. And some of that is going to be deploying capital, being very intentional. So you're going to have to do your due diligence. Don't listen to this podcast and say, oh, Doug Ferguson said go to the sale barn and buy cows. It's a great investment. That's not what I said. You probably better learn how to market the animals before you do that. But once you have that down, yeah, it absolutely can be a great business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually listening to Dave Ramsey on a podcast the other day, and he was talking about it's really his audience, I guess, is kind of the older, like middle-aged crowd or something, I guess. I don't know if a lot of kids listen to him, but he was kind of explaining that he's like, the people that really get stuck and get in over their head are people that are in a career or job, that are already have their life kind of planned out, and you're not increasing your income anymore. You might get a little raise at work, but you're not keeping up with anything. And then you had got yourself into a bunch of debt, and you're not increasing your income, and the debt's getting bigger because of interest, and it's hard to catch up. So you need to cancel this debt out somehow. Whereas like you think about a kid generally does this, they're going to go increase their value to the world. So their income's going to increase like exponentially for a little while. They may at some point find a career and it's going to die off, but they can go into a lot of debt and pay it off because their income's going up so much, which anybody could do that. I mean, like you said, go learn a skill or get better at your skill or learn how to monetize your skills or your assets in a different way. And that's what I've found in my life too, is just like, yeah, who wants to cut out? Nobody wants to cut out all the fun stuff. I mean, we want to have fun and laugh, but to pay for it, like, why don't you just find another way to monetize, like make more revenue, which if you did both would probably be the best thing to do. But
and Dave said the middle-aged crowd's the one that's kind of stuck in that rut.
Yeah, like,
is that right?
Yeah, if I remember it right, don't just like quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he was talking about like it's the people that get real trapped or the people that already have their career and they're not fixing to make huge life changes. They're not fixing to increase their income with a new skill. They're not going to increase it exponentially. They'll probably get a raise or something at their work, a little bit at a time or promotion or something.
See, when you're explaining that, I'm kind of going back through some of the people I met, and I'm like, man, that's so interesting because I've kind of seen the same thing with some of the middle-aged and older, people that have come through the schools. And then I look at these 20-year-olds, and these 20-year-olds sometimes have a way, they just look like they're checked out in my class, like they're just not paying attention. And then those kids absorb stuff, and then, they'll send me an email, text, whatever, and, oh, look at this trade I did, and look at this trade I did. And I'm like, really, you? Like, you was checked out? But then these kids also, I've noticed in conversations, that 20-year-old group, as much as we might make fun of them, man, they have a way of figuring stuff out. They've got something figured out in life that, somebody that's like me, anti-technology, I'm not going to go there. But man, they're figuring things out. That's why I thought it was interesting that you brought that up, because I'm kind of like, man, I think I'm seeing the same thing as you described that.
If you didn't hear Ben Hell's story on episode 69, you need to check it out. He's been earning trust in the cattle industry one handshake at a time since 1995 at Western Livestock. Western Livestock is proud to be family-owned and operated, now with 5 locations: Oklahoma City, Woodward, Comanche, and Waurika, Oklahoma, and also Knoxville, Iowa. They're proud to do business the Western way, with honesty, integrity, and a handshake that still means something. You can join them ringside or stream their sales from wherever you are. Western Livestock, where a handshake is their word, cattle are money, and timing is everything. If you're looking to buy or sell, contact Ben Hale at 940-631-BEEF. That's 940-631-2333. Check them out on Facebook or westernlivestock.com. Western Livestock is now accepting consignments for their September 20th horse sale in Woodward, Oklahoma. Visit westernlivestock.com to learn more. Well, you just think at some point, and once you've accumulated something, I guess, I would call it like complacency, maybe like at some point, whether it happens when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever, like you get comfortable in your career, you got a family, you got a house, some
there's
car
outside
payments.
pressure, and you got to safety up.
Mm-hmm, and you're not like you said, you're going to go to whatever your job is. You're going to go to work and then spend your free time with your family or doing your hobby or something. And like we talked about being average, like most people aren't learning this skill where you can double your income or something, or exponentially increase your income. At that point, you're just looking for like a 10% raise or basically just keeping up with the economy. And that's
when I was in that environment, working at that feed mill, there were guys there, they had a better job offer, paid them more money. And I'm like, man, you need to bounce and go take that job. And they're like, oh, man, but if I stay here, I'll get full retirement. And I'm like, if you keep living off the income you're making today at that other job and invest the balance, the extra money that you're making, I'm like, and you could actually retire more if you would do that. And they just, man, they wouldn't do it. They get so trapped into that. And I remember when I quit that job, one of the things I heard is, oh man, you're going to lose all your benefits. You're going to lose all your benefits. I'm like, that stuff is just there to make you feel trapped. I'm like, if I go out here and crush it, which I had no idea how I was going to do that at the time, but I'm like, I'll be able to buy my own benefits.
Yeah.
And
that's how I'd always thought.
But we're the people that think like that, like you and me, like, they have that mentality. It's so rare. We're not raised that way. Go to school, get the degree, get the job,
Yeah, I always thought like, well, if I make 10 times as much money doing my own deal as I did at the job, wouldn't that cover all the benefits and the retirement?
Right.
And then just on this episode with Dave, he was talking about how Social Security is a scam, and because the return is not there. It's like if we just did away with that and you took that money that you put into it in the S&P 500 or something, it would earn more money over time.
But isn't it funny how people fall for that? We taught them how to do math for free in high school, and they can't seem to figure that out, and it's just math.
Yeah.
I could get wound up on some of that, but
yeah, that's what I've heard several people say is like business is just math. It's just numbers, and it's not hard math. It's mainly
the thing about business. And probably the hardest thing for me to learn, bull riding being an individual sport. I wasn't a team sport guy, so I'm not a team player. Business is a team sport. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of had to learn that communication skill. I've heard you mention that before in past podcasts. Yeah, you have to learn communication skills. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, being a salesman, yuck. We don't want to do that. It doesn't matter what you do. You're a salesman every day. If you're married, you were a salesman. You sold yourself to her well enough to get her to say yes. Everything we're going to do is sales. And just learning to accept some of that. And I'm not going to say you have to get really great at it, but you got to get good enough. Mm-hmm. And it's really not that hard because most of the people out there are not going to try to be good enough.
Yeah. Kind of staying on some of that we're just talking about, I've asked a lot of people like what the top 3 books or something you'd recommend, but just going broader than that, like what are some good resources, just in really success in life in general is, I like to keep it pretty broad, but if you learn success in life, some of it has to do with money, and I know your school's probably one of them, but
I mentioned the book Think and Grow Rich a lot. I've got slides in my curriculum right out of that book. And the interesting thing about Think and Grow Rich, there is not a chapter in there on money. Mm-hmm. It's all mindset and our perception towards wealth and money and behaviors, that kind of stuff. So I really love that book. I just read, It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad. And in there, he talks about what he calls neutral thinking. So we're not going to use like positive affirmations. I'm a big believer in affirmations, but we have to keep them neutral. And I'm not a football fan, so I don't know who this guy is. Russell Wilson, supposed to be quarterback, won a Super Bowl or something, I gather. But it wasn't like I'm going to pass for so many yards and do this and this and this in a game and have this kind of season. It's like I'm going to get my footwork down. I'm going to hit my reads, execute,
Focus on the
and the
inputs.
linemen do your job, play by play by play. Don't worry about what's on the scoreboard. Don't worry about what's on the clock. We execute. That play's over. Forget it. Move on to the next one. And then, to think of a third one, I'm going to go back to that book, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, just because that had such a huge impact on me. And I've gone back and reread that book probably 3 or 4 times at different stages in my life. And it's kind of like, okay, I'm not a bull rider anymore. I'm going to reread this book now for what I'm doing. And then I went back and reread it again, like, okay, now I guess I'm marketing school instructor. So how am I going to try to program my subconscious mind to be a better marketing school instructor? And I guess those would be my 3.
What about like just for ranching or livestock trading or in specifically?
Oh man, you get any of those Allen Nation books, I think are great. What was that one? Knowledge Rich Ranching, I think, is a really great book of his. Walt Davis had a good one called Cerebral Ranching. If you're into the soil health and man, you're that kind of nerd that can really push through a bear, get Savory's book. I forget the title of it, but it's it's a textbook. And that one was a bear for me to get through, but man, there's a lot of good stuff in that one. Trying to think, I've read so many others and they're kind of escaping me right now, but that'd be a good start.
And if somebody's interested in your school and your class, how do they keep up with that? I think you mentioned you had you still have a newsletter or blog deal?
So yeah, there's they call it Doug's Market Intel, and that'll be on the Farm Progress websites. Sometimes they link it on Beef Magazine. And otherwise, I do have a website, MrCattlemaster.com. There's a Mr. Cattlemaster Facebook page. And, my contact information's on there. And like I said, I do answer the phone. I get a lot of phone calls from all over, and I do answer the phone.
And your class is mainly up there around your house?
Yeah, we have most of them throughout the year will be in Beatrice, Nebraska, and I get it. Nobody wants to come to Beatrice. But, I'm trying to raise cattle and be a dad. That's why most of them are in Beatrice. But we do try to bounce around the country at least once, if not twice a year. And so we're open to suggestions on places to go. I have not been to the Northwest yet, or Southwest, and I'd love to get to New Mexico or Arizona if we could get enough people to show up there.
So if somebody thought they could get enough people, y'all would be willing to travel?
Yeah, and I do offer private schools, and I think the price for those scares people away. Yeah, you got to have a small group. You got to get, you and maybe 10, 12 of your buddies. Then it will be cost effective. Otherwise, you got to pay the individual tuition and come to wherever we are. And it's so hard to get everywhere. Everybody wants a school in their backyard, and it's just it's hard to do that.
How big are your normal schools?
So we've been kind of expanding enrollment a little bit. This one in Tennessee, I think Amber said there were like 50. What she said, you heard it, 55 or 56. We did Bismarck at the request of Mary Jo Ehrman, Farming Without the Bank. We had 72 in that one. I turned 40 away. It is so hard to control a crowd of over 40 people because it's fascinating for me to watch this. Human beings are sociable, and then they get to talking, and I cannot get them to sit down in their seat and shut up. And I'm like, if you want me to get this done on time, I got to talk, not you. So In Beatrice, we limit them all to 40 just because the hotel size and facilities. And 40 is a really good group. You can have a lot of discussion and questions with 40. 70 people, we can't have a whole lot of discussion there.
Yeah. And then it's 3 days. Is that what you said?
So the school itself is 2 full days. A lot of times we set up a meet and greet the night before. That's not required. And people will ask, is it worth coming to that? 1 time out of 10, yeah, because some cowboy's going to show up there and start talking, and we're all listening to him. There are some people that come through, start really telling amazing stories and amazing experiences. But a lot of what that meet and greet does is if everybody shows up at 8 a.m. on day one, you got that nervous energy, and they don't want to sit beside each other, and they're kind of, If we have the meet and greet the day before, it gets rid of all that nervous energy. They've already met other people, and man, they come in there social and relaxed, ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I appreciate you coming on. Any closing thoughts or anything else you want to mention?
You should not ask me if I have closing. I'm one of them guys, and I've had a lot of windshield time. I've had a lot of thoughts. I've been writing notes on notebook driving down the highway for the last several days, but we might save that for another time.
Awesome.
But no, I will. I got to say this. I kind of told you this off air. You done something that nobody else has been able to do, and that's to get me to come back to Texas. When people say, "Oh, you should do a marketing school in Texas," I'm like, yeah, and I nod in agreement. But I'm like, I'm never going back to Texas. When I drove truck, I probably met the village jackass, and I'm like, if this is the way Texans act, I'm not coming back to Texas. So we crossed the state line yesterday out of Louisiana. We stayed the night. We got here a little early here in Fort Worth, and we were at the grocery store, and people were so polite, so friendly. I'm like, okay, maybe we need to come back to Texas and do a school. So I maybe that's my closing thought. Like, Texans don't always behave the way I thought they did.
Yeah. Well, y'all, everybody from Texas, Oklahoma, reach out, and we'll try to get them to come down and do a school in our backyard, so we don't got to
there you go
all the way up to Nebraska.
Let's do it.
But I appreciate you coming on, and I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Crockett. It's nice to meet you.
Y'all go check them out, and we'll see y'all next time.